Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode. Layoffs are back, hiring is frozen, AI is restructuring the true demands of what a job needs. And today I sit down with Phil Rosen, co-founder of Opening Bell Daily, a leading financial newsletter, to talk about how AI is playing the role in increasing layoffs in the job market and how to stay sound in a weakening job market and how to keep a job and look for a job. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I have. Phil, it's amazing to have you back on. It's been a couple months. We got a lot of data to talk about, a lot of very interesting data. So first of all, we want to talk about the end of labor hoarding. Can you tell me what that is and how companies are approaching it today versus how they were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, Claire, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the time. You essentially have a shrinking and contracting labor market right now, and there are a bunch of reasons for this. The biggest and most obvious thing that people want to point to is AI. So companies will see these developments in AI. They see ChatGPT and how good at so many things it is. And the talk is that companies are using that to justify layoffs. Whether or not they're using it to actually increase productivity today, it's sort of a bet that at some point the tech will be so good that they will need a smaller workforce. So I would say that's the biggest and flashiest headline right now, but there are a million other things happening that are causing the labor market to weaken, and we can get into those as well.
But do you think those layoffs or the restructuring would have happened otherwise without AI? Because companies are always looking for excuses to increase productivity and shareholder value, you know?
Of course. So what we saw during the pandemic was an unprecedented hiring boom. So at the time, if you were looking for a job, you could pretty much go anywhere to any company, and you didn't have to be that exceptional to get a job. You could just apply, and essentially you would get a job because it was an employees market. But right now,
what made it an employees market for people who don't understand?
There was easy money, right? A lot of easy money flying
Printing
around.
Money.
Companies could hire like crazy, and there was no real money tightness that was limiting those factors. And also, it just felt like we were in boom times, right? So all of that led to companies overhiring, you could say. And now we're sort of seeing this retrenchment back to pre-pandemic levels. But because that's happening at the same time as artificial intelligence is taking over the labor market, a lot of people just point to, okay, AI is the reason that we're letting people go, and also it's the reason we're not hiring anyone. But I think it's a combination of this pandemic hiring boom is ending, or it's been over for a while now, so hiring is just slow. And then AI, yes, it's a factor, but I don't know if it's as big a factor yet as people will make it out to be, or at least as companies make it out to be. And then the third thing I think is that the labor market started to slow once the Fed started hiking rates in 2022. So we have seen pretty much a very gradual decrease in job openings since 2022 in the Fed's first rate hike until now. And the Fed just started cutting rates again. So you could say, all right, we're on the precipice of a boom. I'm not sure if that's the case.
Generational run.
Maybe.
I feel like that already happened.
We're seeing it in the stock market.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about, though, is what I feel like I personally still have a hard time understanding is that there seems to be a mismatch between the markets and stocks continuing to go up. And it's like, oh, every single time you hear layoffs, it's like a stock goes up, magical percentage. Amazon, I mean, they announced 14,000 layoffs and then their stock rose 1% in a day, right? And we're seeing the same thing across all stocks. Why is there such a mismatch? And do you see the job market catching up to the stock market, like meaning hiring goes up, or the job market or the stock market catching up to the job market, meaning stocks go down?
Yeah. So what you're referring to, I think, is there's this chart that's been going around, and it just shows how stocks have been going up and to the right, and job openings have been going down and to the right.
Yes.
So that, to a lot of people, is a very scary chart because it's like, okay, look, investors and asset allocators, they're going to continue to get wealthy and accumulate wealth and power, while everyday Americans who are trying to get jobs or trying to keep their jobs, their opportunities are shrinking. And I don't think it's that black and white of a story, but that's sort of the high level takeaway from that chart that's been flying around. And as far as why you're seeing stock prices go up when these companies announce layoffs. For example, if Amazon announces layoffs, it's firing 10,000 people. If each of those 10,000 people are making $80,000 a year, think about how many savings that is for Amazon. So if you're an investor, then it's like, okay, now they have more capital to allocate to different areas of the business. AI, for example, technology, research, all these things. So that's a pretty easy relationship to explain, I think, why stocks go up if the company announces layoffs. But it's a little more complicated as to why the entire market has been ripping when the labor market's been deteriorating pretty rapidly. And my sense is that just because you have this generational bull run happening, right? You have every asset class is going up, gold is going up, Bitcoin's going up, stocks, everything. It's been a great year for investors. But this is the K-shaped economy that people talk about. So half the economy is going like this and half is going like that, right? So it forms a K.
The growing wealth inequality.
You could say wealth inequality, but you could also say like asset allocators versus people that don't own investments. That's another way to look at it. And I think I saw Chipotle's earnings call. The executives came out and said they're seeing a decrease in traffic from people that make under $100,000. So that's typically a pretty big share of this sort of fast casual demographic. But with people earning under a certain number, they're commuting or frequenting these shops less. And that could just be a sign of people want to spend less because they have less money, or maybe they're job insecure, so they don't want to spend as much money. So there's a bunch of things that go into that. But generally, I think it's a story of this K-shaped economy.
And do you think we are returning to more of the efficiency culture? There's one economist that said that this is starting to look like the 90s again, where companies are awarded for layoffs. Do you think there's any difference, or are we starting to do the same exact thing?
I can't speak to what that economist was speaking about. I wasn't there. But I think generally if the market sees more disciplined capital allocation, like smaller headcounts, the market will reward that as far as stock prices. But the thing that I think most people are worried about is really, how am I going to get a job? Am I going to get laid off from my current job? And you see this in a lot of these sentiment surveys. So the Fed has surveys, University of Michigan has surveys, like all these things are pointing to the same conclusion, which is people feel very unconfident about how they can get their next job. And also they're not as comfortable keeping their current positions because they're seeing all these layoffs happen at all these rival companies. And that also means they're probably not going to be looking for a job willingly and quitting their job willingly like they may have been doing 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I want to jump into this later, but I do remember meeting a girl who had just graduated college, and she was talking about how none of her and her friends have found a job. Some of them were doing unpaid internships, and they've been blessed to have their parents support them during this time. But I'm curious as to what it looks like for everyone else who doesn't, you know?
I just spoke to a asset manager CEO, and he was telling me that his daughter has been looking for a job for a year, and she graduated college a year ago.
Okay.
And
what was the major?
I think business.
Yeah. So I've heard of that too. Yeah.
And think about it, this is someone raised in a, in theory, a high income family, went to a good school, did all the right things, and she's been in the job market for a year, still lives at home and can't get a job.
I mean, we'll touch on that later, but jumping back into the AI and the productivity paradox. So productivity rose 3.3% year over year, the fastest since 2003, while total job openings have fallen 30% since 2022. Like you said, AI is boosting output but reducing headcount. Is AI a short-term layoff catalyst, or do you think there will be a long-term structural shift in the labor market, and what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's very smart people that are trying to figure that out right now, I think. AI right now, I think it already has, you can use AI to justify layoffs in some jobs, right? Certain white-collar jobs, certain rote tasks that AI can do. I think you can use that as justification to not hire for those positions anymore. However, I don't know if it's reached a point where you can, fire 20, 30% of your workforce and say it's entirely because of AI. I think a lot of these widespread layoffs, they're a bet on how good AI could be, even if we're not there yet. So if a executive's looking at their headcount and they say, okay, we want to let go 10% of our staff, but we still actually need 5% of them or half of them to stay. But because we're just going to do it in one fell swoop, we're going to blame AI, even though we're going to increase the workload for our existing workers that don't let go.
I've heard of that happening for a lot of people.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, and you could argue, well, that's increased productivity. But I think the people in those companies, if they suddenly get 50% more work just because their peers got laid off, productivity isn't necessarily increasing, which doesn't mean it won't when AI gets better and better, because it's getting better every minute of the day. So I think that it's not directionally incorrect to expect, all right, we're not going to need this many people at some point. I don't know if we're there yet, but we're seeing it at the edges.
Yeah. And I mean, it probably also puts everyone who's getting the boatloads of work put onto them. It's like, I can't leave this job because there's probably no other job for me out there. Therefore, I have to sit here and take it. Ugh, not an ideal situation. And so how do you think workers should interpret the rising productivity alongside the stagnant hiring? Do you think that this should be something that people should be really stressed about, semi-stressed about? Let's start getting into the job conversation.
Yeah, it really depends on the industry you're in. I think, for example, trade schools, I think, are booming, and trade positions and blue collar work, they're not getting wiped out by AI, right? That's not where layoffs are happening.
But trade school is more so like plumbing and
it's like blue collar work, and white collar corporate jobs. Those are the ones getting hit worse by AI, like investment banking, for example.
Yes.
Building
OpenAI is training using 150 bankers to train a customized model.
And OpenAI is so good that they're probably going to achieve what they're setting out to do as far as automating a lot of tasks in investment banking. And I've seen Wall Street executives come out and they say, look, we can build spreadsheets and presentations and decks that used to take 50 hours by a team of analysts. We can now have AI do that. So it's already happening. And these are, very coveted white collar positions. So I think those are most at risk right now. And I do think that's going to accelerate as far as layoffs in that sector, and also not even layoffs, just an unwillingness to hire on the part of companies. So I think the cliche here is, well, why don't you just get proficient in AI and then you'll get better job opportunities. I think there's something to that. I think everyone should be using these tools every single day so that you can be really well versed in ChatGPT and Sora and all these other tools that are coming out. And because all the models are changing every second of the day. So really you have to use them constantly just to feel like you're in the loop of these things. But I don't know if it's as simple as being well versed, therefore you can get a job. Because I've met plenty of people that they're some of the brightest people I know, and they struggle a lot to find jobs. I spoke to one engineer at a big tech company recently, and he said 2 years ago he was doing 3 to 4 interviews a week to try to hire people for his team. And now he's doing 1 interview per quarter. So think about the drop off. Same exact job, right? Same programming job, but the rate of hiring has slowed so dramatically. And he didn't say this explicitly, but my guess would be because he and his team are so much more productive and quick with their programming and code that they just need fewer people over time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so tough. But my question is about the blue collar jobs though. Are they not going to be affected by robotics at all? I feel like I feel like it's like the horsemen of the apocalypse. It's the rates, it's it's AI, it's robotics, and what else? How much of robotics has been priced into all of this, you think?
First of all, the market has priced in everything. I think the market knows way more than any of us. But we see Amazon has thousands of robots already working. Did they not
just say they're going to lay off 600,000 workers in the next 5 years?
It was a very big number. Yeah. And look, those are going to be a lot of automated blue collar jobs in these warehouses, in these supply chain places. And I think that's part of it. But I also think it's going to, if I had to guess, and I'm not really big on forecasts, but if I had to guess, I think the white collar work is going to get hit much harder because a lot of it, I think people are sort of realizing AI can do so much of these sort of everyday office jobs. That's going to be it already is, I think, a very sudden reckoning for a lot of people. And I don't expect that to, like, there's no way that reckoning slows down as AI improves.
Yeah.
So, and I know in my own life, since ChatGPT came out, I've been able to accomplish and complete tasks that would have taken me years of work and research to try to do, or teams of people to try to do. But now just myself, without asking anyone for help, I can accomplish so much as far as like the research and building data and building reports and presentations, like all this stuff I don't even need a team for, but only because I have these AI tools.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm the same way. I feel like my job would typically be the job of at least 2 to 3 people, but it's now I can do it with just me. And I feel like that's the case with a lot of people. And we are seeing this also in trends of hiring concentrating in senior positions, and we're just getting rid of all entry level.
Yeah, I've read about that as well. So to your point that you're doing the job of multiple people right now, and so am I think everyone should be, in theory. Now that we have these tools, there's almost no excuse not to be ramping up your work capacity. And in theory, that you could ramp up your work capacity without increasing your hours per day with some of these tools. So I think that's the thing that makes employers and executives more willing to lay people off, because they probably are thinking similar to what I'm saying right now. Well, now that we have AI, each individual should be able to contribute as much as 3 individuals or 5 individuals. So why don't we just cut headcount by 10%, 20%, and then maybe we're going to ramp it up over time. And it's uncomfortable in the beginning and in the moment, but the long view on this, and the bet that pretty much all of corporate America is taking, is that we will be more productive as businesses, as individuals, and probably as a country.
You hear this all the time, is that these tools are the worst that they're going to be. And I think for now, they are still pretty bad. Like there's a high margin of error, I would say,
Maybe.
with a lot of the tools.
Some are pretty good though.
But I do agree that in the near future, that's something that's going to change a lot. And I think, at some point, there's just going to be the human in the loop, which is essentially, I feel like, a little bit of what I do. It's like I work with the tools to make them run, to make the workflows be automated. But at the end of the day, I'm just the human in the loop.
So think about this, Claire. When I used to work at Business Insider, we had entire teams of people that would do charts and data and the art department for all the stories that the newsroom would publish. And they did a great job. I knew a lot of them. They were great. But now I'm sort of almost like a one-person newsroom, right? I'm running Opening Bell Daily. I'm producing articles and newsletters and art myself. We don't have an art department. And I'm creating, dozens of charts per week, and also dozens of art and graphics per week. And I haven't had to hire anyone or contract out anything. And that doesn't mean that the skills are not valuable, because they're super valuable to be able to do that stuff and be trained to do it. However, AI can get you 75% of the way there for free. So if every company wakes up to something similar, okay, if I don't need to invest, millions of dollars in my staff because I only need a couple people to do this, that has very crazy implications for, one, for shareholders, but 2, also for how big the business can get with how few people.
If you were to remove AI from the equation and you were to be running Opening Bell, how many people would it take versus just you?
Yeah, if I had to go back to, let's say, 2021 tools, we would probably need to triple the size of the team.
So 3 people?
6. With me and Anthony, right?
Oh, yeah, true. Okay.
Yeah, because there would have to be like analysts probably. We would need analysts, we need art department.
Yeah, so can you give me the quick snapshot of the people that you would need and what it's been replaced by?
I think that's it. I think, the art department is like critical in media for the media I'm doing. And then you need analysts to build the data sets, the charts. That's probably most of the team actually would be analysts and researchers. But I'm able to do all of this myself because with these tools, I can cut the time by 10x in how long it would take to do all these things. Probably 20x.
Diabolical work, let me tell you.
Well, think about, this is just a relatively small media company in the grand scheme of things. But when you have a 100,000 person company, or when you have an Amazon, right, the second largest employer in the country, and they are picking up on these proficiencies that are coming from AI, there are very wild implications for this. And I don't know if we are ready for them, frankly. And, it changes the whole social contract with what we expect to be able to do in life, the wages we can earn, the jobs we can get. I've seen Elon Musk talk about how we won't have universal basic income. It'll be like universal abundant income or something along those lines, because he thinks AI is going to take pretty much everyone's jobs, so that there's going to be no choice but to have everyone be sort of on the take from the government.
But how is that a good thing? If you could try to spin it in a way that's positive, how is that a good thing?
Well, if machines can do everything, and this is a very old problem that they thought about 100 years ago as well. They thought machines would do everything, no one would work. Yeah. I don't think that's...
And how much of that is also fear-mongering? Because we've heard this in the age of the internet, all the jobs are going to be taken when cars were created. Literally, we've had this happen. But I do feel like it is actually happening this time. I'm not going to lie.
It feels more significant, I would say, than ever before. Look, when the lamppost lighters were protesting the light bulbs, that feels a little different than what's happening right now when we see all these white collar jobs literally evaporating overnight.
And on top of that, you have robotics that's affecting the blue collar jobs. So it feels like there is not one facet of the job market that's left untouched, in my opinion.
That's probably true. And I don't know. Yeah, no one, I don't think, grasps the full implications of what that means, really.
Just give me a positive spin. Tell me what to look forward to.
The positive spin is that, I'm very optimistic on what this tech enables, because I've seen what it enables for myself and my business, right? So I know that we've 10x the business just because of these tools. And if we didn't have these tools, we would be moving much slower. And we would have been spending a lot more money to do the same exact things. So the outlook I see that I think is optimistic and net positive for society is that these tools become super good at the things that we want them to do, but then that frees up time for individuals to focus on the work that they actually want to do. So, for myself, it's like all the data analysis and like spreadsheets. I don't want to do that. I still have to do a lot of it because the tools aren't there yet, but they make me faster at doing those things. Eventually, it'd be great if I just could automate it entirely, and then it would just give me outputs that I could integrate into my reporting. So things like that. And I don't think that probably doesn't apply to every job. Like, that's a very hard thing to make a sweeping statement about.
Yeah.
But I don't think that super effective tools are going to make society worse. I don't think that's ever happened.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. I feel like from the very pessimistic perspective, it's just that it's going to replace the jobs of a lot of people. Yeah. But you could argue with every technology. But you're right that has there ever been technology that has created more harm than good, like in an innovation sense? Well, I argue social media. I question sometimes a little bit, but
well, think about this: is social media really like once it was invented and done? We're almost 15 years out from that. I don't know if it's that innovative anymore. It's mostly just engineering our attention, right? So we are glued to these things, and the ingenuity of these devices or platforms is that they just can't let us pull away, and they're really good at that. But I don't know if that's necessarily like a leap in innovation compared to something like AI, where it's like genuinely kind of world-breaking technology. Social media, it's intuitive and attractive and really compelling, but I'm not sure, let's say like post it being invented, I think that was a huge leap. But since then, I don't know how many leaps there have been. So I don't know if you can't really call it an innovative technology anymore. I think it's just like almost like background noise to our lives now. But maybe AI will become that too. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it could be a mix of both. I think from what I was saying regarding social media was that when it was first created, I feel like it was initially, with talking about the potential downside, was that it was initially started as a way for people to connect with each other.
Yeah.
And then once they realized, holy cow, this is a cash machine.
Yes.
Then they started using all the engineering and all this stuff tactics. Because I do think it started off, a lot of it started off maybe, in my opinion, a little bit more lighthearted and fun and like connecting with other people. Now it's like overconsumption, buy everything you see, do not literally let go of your phone for 2 seconds and let me turn your brain into mush kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, so the CEO of Palantir had this book, I think it was called The Technological Republic. And in that book, one of the points he made was, why are the smartest and brightest students graduating from Harvard and MIT and Yale, all these places, why are they going to go work at social media companies to engineer algorithms to steal our attention instead of going to work on defense, national security, AI projects that are going to change the world and make the world a better place? Instead, all these geniuses are going to social media companies because, one, they pay very well and they pay the best. There's a lot of prestige that comes with working at Meta, for example. And I think he made a good point, and I hadn't really thought about it until I read his book. And I was like, wow, we should figure out the incentives to get people to work on national projects, and like sort of this sense of we have to make the world a better place. We have to make the country a better place, rather than, all right, I'm going to go get my stock options, get a high salary, and build these Facebook apps.
Yeah, because I feel like in that book, it was also touching on the loss of patriotism and how people have lost the feeling of purpose in the U.S. But I'm sure as we're seeing, there's a bunch of AI tools as well as founders creating these small companies that can scale in their own different ways. But I wanted to jump into jobs. Okay, so jobs related to how people can get these jobs and keep these jobs. So the unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds is 10.8%, the highest since 2021. Only 30% of college graduates, as we talked about earlier, from the class of 2025 have secured entry-level jobs in their field versus 41% of the class of 2024. How can you, as someone who's graduated with probably little to no job experience, land enough experience to get you a job that requires you to have experience?
So I think it's a very different time today than when I graduated in 2018.
Yeah.
But something that I did, which I think helped me a lot, was I started a blog, which I wrote a bunch of articles on separate from my day job. My day job at the time was I was teaching English to 3-year-olds. So I had a science degree, but I didn't want to go to medical school. I just wanted to be a writer. So I got this English teaching job, and I started this travel blog because I was living in Hong Kong. And that travel blog is what got me my first job at a newspaper. It wasn't the current job I had that got me the job. So I think the lesson that I took away was you should always have projects you're working on and that you're proud of outside of your actual day job. So I think that's going to be the thing that opens more doors for people than their current experience, let's say. So if you are trying to get a job, there's pretty much no excuse not to be working on a side project at any given time. Yeah. When you have a job, when you're looking for a job, when you're a student, when you're a founder, like you should always have projects going on, whether that's a TikTok channel, even though I'm not a fan of TikTok, a YouTube channel, a podcast, a newsletter, a blog. All these things are ways to demonstrate your skills and your intelligence and your curiosity about whatever it is. I think the subject matter is actually irrelevant. It's just the fact you're working on something. So if I was looking to hire someone, and let's say both students had 4.0s, went to the same college, but one had a podcast that had 100 episodes in it about, doesn't even matter what topic, and the other did not have a podcast, I'd probably take the guy with the podcast. And not because I am looking for a podcaster, but it shows me initiative and it shows me that they're interested in something, literally anything, right? It shows interest and curiosity. And I wouldn't even look at how many listeners do they get, how big is their audience, how big is their social media following. I think that is also kind of secondary to the fact that they're working on something. And if you expand that out to your entire career, I think it could be, it could change everything for every, whether you're middle of the road experience or early career or even like late career executive level. The fact that if you show you can have projects and interests that you've been consistent on over many years, that is a better attribute to be bragging about or showing off than anything on your resume, I think.
Yeah, and I agree, and I love I love everything that you're saying. And in the same breath, there is no excuse for you not to, because there is a plethora of tools. And bonus points, you can leverage those tools and you can leverage AI to build your personal portfolio, whether you quote unquote, vibe code a website, or you generate clips for the podcast. I feel like there's so much room to make something. Even if it's garbage, like you just make something, Well,
think about if you have kids and you see their friends doing a lemonade stand, you suddenly think, wow, why are my kids doing a lemonade stand? Maybe what you would say. I don't have kids, but I imagine if you if you see any example of initiative, it's like, wow, like that's a really interesting and noble and admirable thing. Initiative in any form. And I think that lasts from when you're a kid all the way to, indefinitely.
Yeah. And I think my philosophy with everything is that, which I actually learned this from you the last time we spoke, is instead of waiting for yourself to be good at something, you just do it. Because confidence comes from doing, not necessarily thinking that you can do it,
Well, how would you get good at it unless you do it?
Exactly.
So, and that was, the same thing with my travel blog. When I first graduated college, I had zero writing experience, zero anything. But the only way I knew the only way I was going to get better was by publishing as much work as possible on the internet.
My question is, do you think the world right now values quantity over quality or quality over quantity in terms of content? Because I think this has been a big debate. I mean, I deal with this every day. I'm like, I don't like this short. I don't like how it sounds. I don't like how it looks, but we don't have the time. We're fighting for so much attention, and especially because 90% of content in the next couple of years is expected to be AI generated. So
that's a crazy stat. I think when you're early in your career, you should go for volume, because you're not going to know what quality means or how to achieve quality unless you get your 10,000 hours in. Right. So, for example, when I was, again, back to this travel blog, I was publishing as many articles as I could because I kind of had it in my head that this is the only way I'm going to write one excellent piece is if I get through 200 crappy ones before I get to that one excellent one. I wasn't going to spend a year working on one article. I'd rather spend a year working on 200, and then maybe by 201, that's the one I can pitch to get a job or get into grad school or something like that.
Yeah, and I was listening to the Founders episode on how Elon works, and something that Elon apparently says is that you need to fail a lot. He's like, you need to fail a lot, it needs to be shitty a lot, and you need to be comfortable with that, because that is the only way you can build resilience. And once you build resilience, you will make better calculated risks. Otherwise, you just don't know. And the only way you do know is by finding out. And you got to fuck around and find out,
It's true. And that comes from reps. I think like doing as many reps as possible of anything that you ever aspire to be good at. You're going to fail a lot, but then in the process, you're going to sort of sharpen your edges a bit and get better. And your knowledge of what does and doesn't work just increases so rapidly the more of that thing that you do.
Yeah. And so how do you think, we're talking about just putting out content itself, but the issue is now we are in an attention war. And this is relative to jobs as well. You are in front of thousands of resumes if you are looking to hire someone. And a lot of these are AI generated. A lot of people are lying. There's just a lot of fraudulent activity out there, And so how do you go about getting yourself seen outside of just the media that you put out? Connecting with others.
Yeah, it's a tough question to figure out. If I was applying to a job today in let's say in marketing, and I wanted to work on a marketing team at a big corporation, something that I would do, I wouldn't go through the resume or cover letter stuff. I would just build the coolest campaign ever and try to execute on as much of it as I could on a shoestring budget and see if they notice. Like tag them in every social post on LinkedIn, on X, wherever. And you want to build something in the real world that I think can drive results. And that is kind of, it sounds like a ridiculous and outlandish thing to do. But if I was trying to get a job and if I needed a job, in theory, you should do everything that you can. Or if I wanted to get a job at a newspaper and they weren't hiring, I would go get, I would get all the stories that they've done recently and then essentially do whatever they're doing, but try to do it better. And I would do it in public. So post it directly on LinkedIn, post it directly on X, on your own blog, and figure out whatever you can do to get it in front of the right person, like the hiring manager or the editor-in-chief, whoever it is. And I think, the way I got my job at the newspaper when I first had the travel blog was because that travel blog got in front of one person. And that was the only way I got the job. I didn't apply to anything. So I would take that lesson and try to do it across every single industry if I was trying to get a job. And I think that's kind of the only way to stand out now because people are doing 10,000 applications a day with AI. So you can't really compete as far as like trying to muscle your way through.
Yeah, and you also have AI looking at the resumes.
Yes.
Are we cooked?
Kind of. I mean, I think applying in the traditional channels is already outdated, but more and more people will realize it's outdated. But then you'll get more and more people taking bold bets. Like I think cool ones I've seen is like people making like TikTok resumes essentially, and they're like acting out different parts of their career so far, or they're acting out different parts of the job that they would do for someone. And because it's on video and because it's, smart and edited well and compelling, that's going to get someone's attention if you get it in front of them rather than, kind of another resume.
I like it. The resume, the video resume, because I feel like
people are doing it all the time.
Resumes are dead. And so if you could leave anyone who's looking for a job with a final piece of advice, what would it be?
Whatever everyone else is doing around you, do the opposite. And the opposite isn't obvious. So I think you have to think about what the opposite is creatively. And then that's your course of action. So if everyone's applying to a job on LinkedIn with their resume and their cover letter, I would be not doing that.
I like that. Amazing.
It might be bad advice, but we'll see.
No, I like it. I like it. Go against the grain. Well, thank you so much for coming. It was amazing to have you. And we'll see each other next time.
Thank you for having me.